All right, most pressing questions about the 49ers 53-man roster cut down, at least the rough draft of it, answered right here, different spots of the city. I'm going to start with Ambry Thomas. Why is Ambry Thomas on the 53-man roster? Well, glad you asked. The 49ers, and really no team in the NFL right now, in the pass-happy NFL, is in good position to give up cornerback depth. And Ambry Thomas is cornerback depth for the 49ers, and he's not the worst cornerback depth that you can find. If you don't believe me, rewind back to 2020 when the 49ers had to play Brian Allen off the practice squad against the Dolphins. It was an absolute disaster. So even though the 49ers are very deep at that cornerback room this year, they still need to insulate themselves in case of injuries down the road. And Ambry Thomas currently has a broken forearm. So you carry him on the roster, but you have a wink-wink deal with a veteran who you wanted to carry anyway, who's going to re-sign that you cut. So that's Eric Saubert in all likelihood. The tight end, or Rock Yassin, or both of them. They needed to do this injury maneuver with a couple different players. Ambry Thomas is one of them. John Feliciano will likely be the other. So Ambry Thomas will be on injured reserve. The 49ers can bring him back if and when they need to. So they're simply maintaining their optionality by carrying Ambry Thomas in this way with no downside. All right, next question. Why'd the 49ers carry only 2 tight ends on their 53-man roster? Answer provided at Kezar Stadium, the original home of the San Francisco 49ers, here in the corner of Golden Gate Park. The 2 tight ends were, well, one was obvious, George Kittle. The second might surprise you a little bit more. It was Jake Tonjes, who was on the practice squad last year for the 49ers and just showed a really high floor over the course of camp and the preseason. Caught everything thrown his way and also executed at backup fullback, which is what the 49ers need from the tight end position with Ross Dwelley now gone. That's where Braden Willis did not perform for the 49ers against Vegas. He missed a big block early on. I think that might have been Braden Willis's final chance to really impress enough to grab one of those 4 tight end spots. They cut both Willis and Cam Latu, the draftees from the 2023 class. But they're not planning on only carrying 2 tight ends once this 53-man roster actually becomes functional. It's because you need to view this roster as a draft. 49ers are operating one of the roster maneuvers that I talked about with Ambry Thomas, very likely at the tight end position. Eric Saubert, who was number 2, the veteran throughout all of training camp, is very likely going to be re-signed tomorrow after the 49ers move Ambry Thomas and John Feliciano to injured reserve. So they've got a wink-wink deal there with Eric Saubert. Now, there's also a chance that the 49ers bring back Logan Thomas, and I think that's even likely. I just don't know if it's going to be 53-man roster or practice squad for Logan Thomas. But remember that Logan Thomas was not with this team for a couple weeks of training camp, but they already brought him back into the building a few days ago. And I would think that that means the 49ers have some plans for Logan Thomas on this football team. I do know that in the past, San Francisco has almost always carried 4 tight ends on the 53-man roster. Things could be changing this year. This could be more of a passing-oriented team, as I've talked about a lot over this course of training camp, and that would mean that maybe they do downsize the 3 tight ends. But if they stay at 4, Logan Thomas may be one of them, and somebody like Mason Pline will be signed to the practice squad if the 49ers can do it. Here at Kezar Stadium, by the way, they've got the plaque to Bob St. Clair. It's Bob St. Clair Field, Hall of Fame offensive lineman who played every single home game of his career in this stadium because he went to San Francisco Pauley High School. That's now a defunct high school. George Seifert also went there. You could see the roof of the gym above my shoulder. Then he went to USF. They played their home games here at Kezar, and then he was a member of the 49ers playing on this field right behind me in Golden Gate Park. Really cool stuff. And that means that we could talk about the offensive line. Bob St. Clair played offensive tackle for San Francisco. So why are the 49ers carrying only 2 offensive tackles on this 53-man roster? There's Jalen Moore on the left side and Colton McKivitz on the right. They cut Chris Hubbard and Brandon Parker, the 2 veterans who are fighting for a swing tackle job. Well, the answer there is a little bit more complicated. For one, Trent Williams is still holding out. So he's on the reserve did not report list. It means he doesn't count against the 53. Second part of that is I don't think that Hubbard nor Parker impressed the 49ers enough. If they're still available to tack onto the practice squad, yeah, maybe the 49ers keep one of those two guys. But they're banking on re-signing Trent Williams. They hope that's getting closer and they get that done. I think that's mandatory for this season to go the way the 49ers want it to go. And that obviously will bump Jalen Moore down one peg on that tackle pecking order. Beyond that, the 49ers offensive line is actually a really interesting case in the bigger picture because you've got two rookies who they cut who play on the interior line. In Jared Kingston, the guard, the 6th-round pick who played really well. And then you have the center, Drake Nugent, who also played really well in the preseason. We have to talk about practice squad poachings now and the potential ability for the 49ers to retain some of these players who they waived. We'll see if Kingston and Drake Nugent are able to clear waivers and rejoin the 49ers on the practice squad tomorrow. Next question, what's the deal with Elijah Mitchell? Well, he's biking uphill against injury issues. That's just a tough situation. Elijah Mitchell on season-ending injured reserve. We don't know the exact injury. He was out at practice on Monday, but he landed on season-ending IR during the roster cut down on Tuesday. They did not designate him to return. So it was a hamstring injury that kept Mitchell out of the first portion of training camp. Then he returned. I don't know if the hamstring flared up again in a more serious fashion or if something else happened. But here's the thing about Elijah Mitchell, and he takes so much heat online. The casual fan needs to understand how brutal and how tough it is to play in the National Football League. And Elijah Mitchell played through 5 or 6 injuries his rookie season. It really was something that, I mean, it's a gladiatorial sport, and he took one for the team that rookie year. Because of that, I think that his body was just never right following that 2021 season. So much sacrificed when the 49ers needed it, when they're so short at running back in 2021 by Elijah Mitchell. You can never question his toughness. But you see it so often. Rookies need to be eased into the league. That's why the hits are harder, the speed is faster, the bruises are bigger in the National Football League. You just have to get your body to a different level of conditioning, a different level of callus to withstand some of that abuse. That's why it's so important that the 49ers handle this Ricky Pearsall shoulder situation well. Unfortunately for Elijah Mitchell, it was a 6th-round draft pick who was excelling in 2021. He was pressed into action. The 49ers were in a situation where they needed to win every single game. They needed a running back. They even moved Deebo Samuel to running back that year. And they were desperate. And Elijah Mitchell came through for them. But unfortunately, I think a lot of the bruises he took, a lot of the injuries he suffered that season have carried forward with him throughout the rest of his career. He's just been unable to stay healthy beyond that point. So Elijah Mitchell's season's done. His contract should toll into 2025. This was supposed to be the last year of his rookie deal, but because he won't play, he'll still be under contract with the 49ers through 2025 if he does decide to keep playing. Finally, the worst question that I'm getting, and I'll answer it here from Twin Peaks, is why did Ronnie Bell make the roster? Well, Ronnie Bell made the roster because he practiced his ass off. He didn't have the best start to training camp. He had some struggles. He was bobbling the football, even on some of his catches. But by the end of it, 7 catches on Monday, right before the cut down, and a really tenacious punt return against the Raiders. By the end of it, he was the best option for the 49ers to fortify the receiving room. And if Brandon Ayuk is part of the roster right now, but holding in, so that's an inefficient part of the roster. And if Ricky Pearsall's in a blue non-contact jersey and you want to make sure that you ease him into action so he's not overburdened the way that Elijah Mitchell was in 2021, well, you better bulk up that receiver room. You better take 7. Ronnie Bell was the 7th. Anyway, signing off from San Francisco, take a look at the fog coming through the Golden Gate.